If we take a look back over the early years of video game systems, they helped to set the stage for the evolution of the video game industry, to create a blueprint for a multi-dollar business model while opening the door for many creative ideas to flourish and be brought to life in arcades and on our home TV screens. The explorative elements of video game concepts during the early console days saw many ideas being brought to life, ranging from many different genres that would see great strides with development, gameplay mechanics and visuals that provided many nostalgic elements to keep gamers coming back for more, beginning with some of the earliest console platforms, with the Atari 2600 and Intellivision systems driving the beginning of the console wars. These concepts would gradually evolve with the introduction of 8-bit consoles with the NES, Sega SG-1000, Master System and personal home computers with Amstrad CPC, Amiga, Commodore 64 and other home systems to develop memorable classics that helped inspire many future horror games that would later go on to see legendary status on future consoles. While many genres excelled and evolved with time, the horror genre wouldn't fully evolve until the 32-bit console generation, as the heavy hardware limitations made it difficult for developers to depict a true sense of horror within games of the time. But without these ideas, the landscape of horror games simply would not exist without them. With that being said, we must take a look back at the early history and evolution of early 8-bit horror games, as they provided the inspiration for many future classics, and without them, the future of horror games most certainly would have been very different. So let us step into the realm of this unique era and prepare to descend into the haunting abyss as we uncover the chilling lore behind the rise of 8-bit horror games and their harrowing impact on the gaming industry and that of the horror genre. We will plunge into the depths of pixelated terror as we explore the origins of 8-bit horror, where the limitations of graphics become an eerie canvas. So if you want to learn more about the early days of horror games, then keep watching. The profound influence and impact that 1980s horror movies had on the games industry gave birth to the evolution of early 8-bit horror titles, which provides an intriguing discussion that allows us to delve into the reasons behind this transformative process. During the 1980s, the horror genre experienced a surge in popularity on the silver screen. Memorable films like Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween and The Evil Dead captivated audiences with their terrifying narratives, iconic villains and atmospheric cinematography. These movies tapped into primal fears and left a lasting impact on popular culture. Around the same time, video games were undergoing their own evolution. The introduction of home gaming consoles and personal computers opened up new avenues for interactive experiences. Developers saw the potential to translate the visceral thrills and immersive storytelling of horror movies into the gaming medium. However, the technology of the era, particularly 8-bit graphics and limited processing power, presented many challenges to game developers. Despite these limitations, they embraced the opportunity to capture the essence of 1980s horror movies and adapted their elements to suit the interactive nature of video games. One key aspect of the influence that 1980s horror movies had on 8-bit games was the creation of atmospheric environments. Developers drew inspiration from the moody lighting and chilling settings seen in these films, translating them into pixelated landscapes. These eerie backdrops, often accompanied by haunting soundtracks, evoked a sense of dread and immersion, heightening the player's emotional experience. Additionally, the emergence of iconic horror movie villains like Freddy Krueger, Jason and Michael Myers inspired game developers to create memorable antagonists in their own right. These pixelated adversaries became the stuff of nightmares, challenging players and instilling fear as they navigated through the game's haunting scenarios. Furthermore, the narrative structure of 1980s horror movies influenced the storytelling in early horror titles. Developers embraced the concept of building suspense, delivering plot twists, and creating intense moments of tension. By weaving captivating narratives into their games, they aimed to engage players on a deeper level and evoke the same emotional responses elicited by horror films of the time. The influence of these iconic movies on early horror games was a symbiotic relationship. As horror movies continued to push boundaries and captivate audiences, game developers found new ways to leverage their influence and enhance the gaming experience. This mutual inspiration led to the birth of a distinct genre that blended cinematic thrills with interactive gameplay. From atmospheric environments and iconic villains to immersive storytelling, these games provided the creative spark that transformed the early years of horror gaming. The result was a fusion of mediums that captivated players and set the stage for the future of horror games. It would take many years before gamers would get a glimpse of what could be possible regarding horror games. Many of the games developed mainly consisted of titles based on popular horror movies of the time, with A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, to name but a few. The insidious influence of pixelated horror games has seeped into the very foundations of the gaming industry, birthing a new era of terrifying experiences during the early generations of video games development. Their innovative approaches to atmospheric tension, psychological manipulation, and minimalist design have served as a haunting muse for the future of horror games. The success of 8-bit horror games demonstrated the potency of atmospheric storytelling, proving that fear could be evoked through the interplay of limited graphics and spine-chilling sound design. Game developers inspired by these pioneering titles began to experiment with similar techniques, harnessing the power of atmosphere to create immersive, nightmarish experiences. Furthermore, the emphasis on player imagination and the art of suggestion found in 8-bit horror games has left an indelible mark on the industry. This influence can be seen in the rise of horror games that rely on psychological fear and player agency to invoke terror. Developers have embraced the notion that what lies hidden in the shadows can be far more terrifying than what is fully revealed. The legacy of 8-bit horror games continues to shape the genre, with modern titles paying homage to their pixelated predecessors. From indie gems to blockbuster releases, the echoes of 8-bit horror resonates in games that seek to unnerve and unsettle players, offering them a journey into darkness that the pioneers of the genre first dared to tread. The impact of 8-bit horror games has proved to be enduring, fueling a renaissance of horror gaming, and ensures that nightmares will continue to haunt players for years to come. The development of titles during this era was still in its infancy, as creators were still unsure of how to properly construct specific themes, let alone create any sense of real atmosphere or tension as you played. However, with these limitations, it would still not stop developers from adapting their ideas to create experiences that managed to appeal to the nature of these terror-filled elements, although a lot of these concepts wouldn't be made possible for at least another 10 plus years, with the evolution of 32-bit consoles and hardware during the 1990s. Real atmosphere and tension showed signs of what could be possible, but it wasn't until the release of games like Alone in the Dark, Dr. Hauser, and Resident Evil that would revolutionize these ideas into the mainstream of gaming culture, that set the standard for future games to evolve during later console generations. The origins of sprite-based graphics are a bygone era where technology struggled to give birth to digital realms due to many limitations, where graphical boundaries imposed their suffocating grip, confining designers to crude and simplistic representations. Developers were restricted to exploring the harsh reality of reduced colour palettes, where vibrant worlds are dulled into shades of despair, but would allow for the creation of something truly terrifying, so players could witness firsthand the inherent terror born from these limitations. The crude shapes and jagged edges became the catalysts for unimaginable nightmares, forcing players to fill in the gaps with their minds, with their own terrified imagination, by diving deep into the abyss of abstraction, where pixelated sprites take on sinister forms, leaving indelible impressions on our psyche. But with these limitations lie untold secrets, as the twisted genius of game developers made sure to wield these crude graphics as tools of terror. The scarcity of detail became an instrument of psychological manipulation, as the mind seeks to unravel the darkness lurking within the pixelated shadows, forcing players to experience the haunting power of minimalist sound design, where a mere beep or blip can send shivers down the spine. As we emerge from this journey into the realm of pixelated graphics and their limitations, we are forever marked by the chilling realization that true horror can thrive in the most constricted of spaces. The ghostly echoes of these pixelated nightmares continue to reverberate through the corridors of gaming history, reminding us that the most terrifying monsters are often born from the absence of detail and the darkness that lurks within our own minds. In the early days of gaming technology, developers faced numerous limitations imposed by the hardware constraints of the time. However, they ingeniously used these constraints to their advantage, finding ways to invoke atmosphere and tension in their creations. And here we are going to look at a few early examples of these limitations and how developers would overcome them. Low resolution and blocky visuals presented developers with many ideas to use clever artistic design and pixel manipulation to create a sense of foreboding. By utilising stark colour contrasts, deep shadows and strategic placement of sprites, they were able to imbue scenes with an eerie atmosphere that heightened the sense of tension. 8-bit consoles had limited sound channels, restricting the complexity and quality of audio. Despite this, developers leveraged atmospheric sound effects, haunting melodies, and minimalistic audio cues to great effect. They recognised that even a simple bleep or a rhythmic pulse could instill a sense of unease and anticipation, leaving players on edge throughout their gameplay experience. Limited memory capacity posed a challenge for developers, preventing them from including vast amounts of content or detailed graphics. However, they embraced this constraint as an opportunity to stimulate players' imagination by leaving certain details ambiguous or abstract, inviting players to fill in the gaps with their own fears and imagination, crafting an interactive experience where the player's mind became an integral part of the horror. Due to the combination of these hardware limitations, the gameplay mechanics in 8-bit games were often simple and straightforward. However, developers leveraged this simplicity to build tension through careful pacing and strategic use of limited resources. They introduced scarcity of ammunition, restricted movement, and unpredictable enemy encounters, heightening the sense of vulnerability and suspense for players. By embracing these limitations and creatively working around them, developers of these early titles were able to craft atmospheric experiences that left an indelible mark on the entire gaming landscape. Their ability to evoke tension and atmosphere within the confines of early technology set the stage for the evolution of horror games, showcasing the power of imagination and resourcefulness in the face of its constraints. To provide more insights regarding these unique elements and limitations, we need to look at some of the most atmospheric 8-bit horror games to gain a glimpse of how developers excelled with their strategies to create some of the best and most memorable experiences of earlier titles. In this iconic horror platformer, players assume the role of Simon Belmont, a vampire hunter on a mission to defeat the Dark Lord Dracula. With its gothic setting, haunting music and challenging gameplay, Castlevania captured the essence of classic horror, immersing players into a world filled with supernatural creatures and treacherous traps. Notorious for its controversial content, Chiller pushed the boundaries of horror in the arcade realm. Players were presented with a series of sadistic scenarios, where the goal was to inflict as much pain and suffering as possible. With its graphic imagery and disturbing themes, Chiller stood as a unique and unsettling experience in the realm of early 8-bit horror. The critically acclaimed point-and-click adventure game blended horror, humour and sci-fi elements. Players controlled a group of teenagers exploring a mysterious mansion filled with bizarre characters and twisted secrets. The game's branching narratives, dark humour and clever puzzles made it a standout title in the early years of horror games. Maniac Mansion is often considered as one of the greatest early examples of horror titles that paved the way for many developers to follow, with generating ideas that would change the industry forever. Uninvited, immersed players in a chilling point-and-click adventure where they found themselves trapped in a haunted mansion. As they navigated its ominous corridors, players unraveled a twisted narrative and faced terrifying supernatural encounters. The game's haunting atmosphere and multiple endings made it a memorable entry within the horror genre. This side-scrolling action game blended horror and humour, as players controlled a young boy who battled bizarre and monstrous creatures in various spooky environments. With its surreal visuals, unconventional enemies, and darkly comedic tone, Monster Party carved its own niche in the realm of early horror games. Based on the iconic slasher film franchise, Friday the 13th put players in the shoes of a camp fending off against the relentless pursuit of the infamous Jason. The game combined exploration, survival, and tense encounters that tried to capture the essence of the film's horror and deliver a reflective experience for fans of the movie. Bringing the nightmare-fueled world of Freddy Krueger to the gaming realm, A Nightmare on Elm Street allowed players to enter Freddy's dream world and battle his nightmarish minions. With its surreal environments and challenging platforming segments and intense boss fights, the game tried to capture the eerie and unsettling atmosphere of the film franchise. In this dark, atmospheric, and tension-filled RPG game, players are thrust into a haunted mansion filled with treacherous puzzles and vengeful spirits. Sweet Home presents a chilling storyline and gruesome imagery, which set the stage for a haunting exploration of the macabre, leaving players on the edge of their seats as they uncover the tragic secrets lurking within the mansion's bloodstained walls. This game would also act as the precursor and inspiration to Capcom's legendary Resident Evil, that would solidify the term survival horror as its own distinctive genre. This arcade shooter plunged players into a haunted house filled with malevolent spirits. Armed with a laser gun, players embarked on a ghostly extermination mission, blasting the spectral foes that lurked in the shadows. The game's eerie visuals and intense gameplay offered a chilling experience in the realm of early pixelated horror. Based on the popular film of the same name, Alien 3 brought the terror of xenomorphs to 8-bit platforms. Players navigated labyrinthian levels, evading and battling the deadly extraterrestrial creatures. The game's dark atmosphere, challenging gameplay, and faithful adaptation of the film's tension made it a noteworthy entry in the 8-bit horror realm. The game saw releases on both the NES and Sega Master System consoles, with the latter having more detailed environments, great sound effects and music, along with a more refined control system. The game would also be released on 16-bit consoles, with more detailed visuals and sound effects, heightening the suspense and fear. Drawing inspiration from the Castlevania series and real-life stories from the sadistic nature of Jack the Ripper, Master of Darkness brought its own brand of horror to the 8-bit realm. Set in Victorian London, players guide Dr. Ferdinand Social through chilling levels, battling supernatural enemies and unravelling a dark conspiracy. With its atmospheric visuals and haunting melodies, this game offered a unique horror experience on 8-bit platforms. Based on the famous novel and movie of the same name, Bram Stoker's Dracula brought the iconic vampire story to 8-bit consoles. Players embarked on a harrowing journey as Jonathan Harker, battling hordes of undead creatures and eventually facing off against the legendary Count Dracula himself. The game's eerie atmosphere and intense boss battles made it a standout horror experience. Some other notable examples include Ghouls and Ghosts, which also released on 16-bit platforms like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, but also received 8-bit ports for consoles like the NES and Sega Master System, among other gaming systems. These ports retain the game's challenging gameplay and dark fantasy horror themes, offering players the chance to battle hordes of supernatural monsters and navigate treacherous environments in their quest to rescue the damsel in distress. These early 8-bit horror games, including titles like Castlevania, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and the 8-bit ports of 16-bit horror games like Ghouls and Ghosts, Alien 3, Altered Beast, introduced players to the realm of horror within the limitations of this unique era. Through their dark themes, atmospheric visuals, and haunting soundtracks, these games captivated players and paved the way for the continued exploration of horror within the games industry. Each game offered its own unique blend of horror elements, from gruesome imagery and intense gameplay to atmospheric settings, influenced by many iconic horror franchises. Together, these titles contributed to the rich tapestry of early 8-bit horror games, leaving an indelible mark on the gaming landscape and providing players with thrilling and chilling experiences that still resonate today. These early examples laid the foundation for the genre, utilising their limited graphics and sound capabilities to plunge players into a world of darkness and dread. Each game pushed the boundaries of what could be achieved within the confines of the technology, leaving players with indelible memories of fear and unease that have inspired many of the popular classics we see today. In the abyss of modern gaming, where hyper-realistic graphics and sprawling open worlds dominate, a peculiar phenomenon persists. A yearning for the past, for a simpler era when pixels reign supreme, and nostalgia casts its alluring spell. It is within the realm of retro aesthetics and nostalgic experiences that gamers find solace, a refuge from the overwhelming complexity of contemporary gaming landscapes. The appeal of retro aesthetics lies in their inherent simplicity, a stark contrast to the sensory overload of modern visuals. The pixelated tapestry of 8-bit and 16-bit graphics harkens back to a time when imagination fueled the gaps between pixels, when the mind was the architect of grand adventures. In these minimalistic visuals, players discover a sense of charm and authenticity, a visual language that speaks of humble origins and artistic ingenuity. Nostalgic experiences, too, hold a powerful allure for gamers. They beckon with promises of revisiting the bygone days of youth, evoking cherished memories and a longing for simpler times. The act of reconnecting with beloved games from the past carries a profound emotional weight, offering a respite from the burdens of the present and transporting players to a realm of innocence and wonder. But there is a darker undercurrent to this allure, a bittersweet feeling that lingers amidst the nostalgic embrace. It is a reminder of a fleeting time, of irretrievable moments lost in the ever-advancing march of progress. The appeal of retro aesthetics and nostalgic experiences is tinged with a longing for a world that can never be fully recaptured, a yearning for a past that exists only in fragmented memories. Within this yearning, gamers seek refuge from the overwhelming nature of the modern games industry. The allure of retro aesthetics and nostalgic experiences is a rebellion against the ceaseless pursuit of graphical fidelity and technological prowess. It is a cry for simplicity, for the purity of gameplay that transcends the need for cutting-edge visuals. In the realm of retro aesthetics, gamers rediscover the essence of play. They embrace the challenge of pixelated worlds, where precise jumps and pixel-perfect timing are the keys to triumph. They revel in the evocative soundtracks that weave tapestries of emotion, resonating deeply within their souls, and they find solace in the communal bond forged through shared memories, where conversations of pixelated heroes and virtual realms ignite fires of camaraderie. In this age of relentless innovation and unceasing progress, the appeal of retro aesthetics and nostalgic experiences will always endure. It is a testament to the enduring power of simplicity and the timeless beauty of pixelated artistry. As gamers venture into the unknown, navigating vast open worlds and breathtaking virtual landscapes, they find themselves inexorably drawn back into the humble origins of gaming, to the pixels and memories that shaped their gaming journeys. In the embrace of retro aesthetics, they find a fleeting respite from the complexities of the present, a reminder of the enduring magic that lies within the pixelated realms of the past. Now is the perfect time to re-immerse yourself in the captivating world of 8-bit horror games and discover the profound psychological effects they have on players. One of the defining characteristics of early horror titles is their ability to tap into the power of the imagination. With their limited graphics and simplistic visuals, these games rely on the player's mind to fill in the gaps and create a sense of terror. This imaginative engagement allows players to project their fears onto the game, amplifying the psychological impact and making the experience deeply personal. The atmospheric sound design of these titles also plays a crucial role in their psychological effects. Through the creative use of limited audio capabilities, developers ingeniously crafted haunting soundtracks, eerie ambient noises, and spine-chilling sound effects. These auditory elements seep into the player's subconscious, heightening the sense of tension, unease, and anticipation, creating a palpable atmosphere of dread. The element of surprise is another psychological tool employed by these games. The unpredictability of pixelated adversaries and unexpected scares can trigger an adrenaline rush and induce a heightened state of anxiety. Players are constantly on edge, anticipating the next jump scare or encounter, which further immerses them in the terrifying world of the game. The interactive nature of these horror games also adds to their psychological impact. Unlike passive forms of horror entertainment like movies, players actively participate and make decisions that shape the outcome of the game. This level of agency creates a sense of responsibility and investment, amplifying the emotional intensity and fear of failure. The inherent challenge and difficulty of these games contribute to their psychological effects. Navigating through perilous environments, solving intricate puzzles, and facing relentless adversaries can induce a sense of accomplishment when overcome, but also frustration and anxiety when met with repeated failure. These emotional highs and lows create a roller coaster of psychological experiences, intensifying the overall impact on players. The nostalgic charm of these early horror games remains ever present in the memories of a long lost era. For those who grew up playing these games, revisiting them evokes a potent mix of nostalgia, innocence and vulnerability. The familiarity of pixelated graphics and retro aesthetics, combined with the horror elements, creates a unique emotional cocktail that transports players back to their formative years and magnifies the psychological resonance. In conclusion, the psychological effects of early 8-bit horror games on players are profound and multifaceted. Through the power of imagination, atmospheric sound design, surprise, interactivity, challenge and nostalgia, these games have the ability to evoke fear, anxiety, anticipation and a range of other intense emotions. They tap into the depths of the human psyche, leaving a lasting impression on the players long after the game is over. They are worth revisiting, and seeing a rise in newer 8-bit horror games being created through indie development in recent times proves its status and popularity within the video games landscape. While we now understand the history of atmospheric elements that made a defining impact of these early generations and the evolution of the genre, I'm sure you want to venture into the depths of the unknown with the future of these scary titles, which you can learn more about in this next video that dives into the evolution of horror games beyond the pixelated 8-bit era.